Okay, so hello everyone, this is OK here, and I'm going to start by looking at some puzzles created by Kleerkast and Legion Destroyer. And the purpose of this stream is to look at mating motifs in positions which have arisen in the 2021 Crazyhouse World Championship. So we start with the first position. Pepsi in Gaming is white. He has knight and queen in hand. My first reaction in this position is to try and put a knight here and a queen here, but this is defended. And only then I spot that, aha, this square is not just protected once, it's protected twice. So always be careful of the double take. Even though it's protected, you can take again. And that's checkmate. Now this is actually, obviously this is a horrific position that Joanna Trice has got herself in against Atomek. But it comes up quite a lot in Bughouse. The instinct would be to try and to play the double check, knight to f7, if that's possible, but actually often even stronger. So this is actually a very standard idea, is this check opening up the bishop on c1 and controlling the g5 square. And here we have nothing in hand. So that's why we take an extra piece, which will be enough, since the h6 square is controlled, to finish the game off. So hopefully my connection is stable because it's slightly lagging. And that's that one. Okay, the next one is Andrew 2888 against Royal Blue 04, and we only have a pawn in hand. And just like in the previous puzzles, you should always look for forcing moves. So I was looking at this, I was looking at this. We only have a pawn in hand, we can't give a whole queen away. But this seems to work, because I was just thinking, if the king steps back, that bishop continues to defend d7. Oh, good afternoon, Apostat Lad. We've just begun. I should have calculated it from the beginning. So what I'm wondering is, if the king steps back, do we just go queen takes f3 and, or was there forcing mate? Oh yes, okay, I see the mate now. Okay, so I think there's something quite important which was missed in this puzzle, which is what if the king steps back, and then the idea is queen f1, rook takes queen, and knight at e2. So you then get a smothered mate, and that's actually arguably an even nicer mate. But okay, bishop takes knight, so the smother idea, and then you take here. And we have a knight in hand. So I could go pawn here, knight here, but it seems like the king is running away. So what am I missing? Oh, pawn here, knight here, and then that will do it, won't it? Oh no, sorry. Knight here gets it gets taken, and then here. Okay, yes. So a little bit tricky, this one, actually. Oh, okay, so the idea was this and then this, but apparently there's another mate in 2 in this position. Oh, of course, yes, okay, this is really important. So obviously I was thinking knight at g6, but knight at g6 blocks g6, which is why I would put the knight on f5. So yeah, okay, so then I play g6. I'm sorry, my stream might be lagging a little bit. Not g6? Why not? Okay, at g6. So what we're doing, we're going through these puzzles by Kleerkast, and we're trying to just notice the mating motifs, and then we'll then look at maybe some more complicated puzzles if we have time. So this is Mark Zedhouse against Play GM. Hopefully I'm coming through loud and clear. Everything's working okay, hopefully. So, so notice that the king is in a bit of a mating net. This is controlled, this is controlled. So the king is sealed off. So all we need to do is deliver a check. We'd like to go knight here check, but the rook is actually covering this square. We'd like to go knight here check, but the bishop is covering this square. So the answer is we actually have to, it's a cast away. We're casting away one of our pawns in order to be able to deliver the mate. All seems good so far. Excellent. Wonderful. Now this I would describe as a king hunt. We have to try and hunt this king. And this is a really good, because we're controlling all these squares. So knight here check. If he tries to come out, queen here is mate. And if he tries to go the other way, then a pawn and a queen are mating. If he runs up, queen here is mating wherever the king goes. So there we go. The next is GM Craze against Studi B. And so the themes here are going to be a bit jumbled, are sort of jumbled up, because this is a it's going from maybe slightly easier puzzles to more difficult, and later we'll take some of these themes in turn. So here, bishop here check is natural, but king h7 looks very safe, because the only check we'd have is knight here, but that gets taken, and then you notice, aha, there's a follow-up. If you clear away that pawn, that king is actually in danger. Knight here check, queen here check, and queen takes h6. Okay. Knit starts 6174 against chicken crosspath, and the problem here for white is he's losing the bishop with check, and the bishop is the defender of his king. So with two knights in hand, that's trouble, because this is usually mate with two knights and enough diagonals. So knight here, if the king steps, he can't step back to here, so he has to go here, pawn here would be mate. So knight here, if he steps up, then we could put a bishop on, and that would be mate. So knight here, oh, the knight's covering. So you don't put a bishop on, you put another knight on, and that's checkmate. So there are just too many knights, so that's very dangerous. Okay. This position, I have a knight, a bishop, a rook, and queen, and on the face of it, that king is very safe. Often an entry point is knight h3, because he can't go to the corner, he has to take it. So knight h3 is definitely interesting, because he does have to take it. And a rule of thumb is if you have two knights, a diagonal, and a queen, then there's likely to be a mate. Or if you have a knight and a rook and a queen. So even if you don't have a second knight, that rook could be enough to, if the g2 square is open. So knight here takes. The problem is that then you could go rook h1 maybe. Takes, and then bishop here, check, takes anything, and if it's a pawn, put a pawn on, and if it's a knight, takes and put a queen on. Remember, this is blocked off, so the king goes back, and knight here is checkmate. So I think that's just going to be it. So I think rook h1. Is there another approach with bishop, rook, and queen? There's another approach. Maybe just queen at g2 is even simpler. Queen at g2 just seems even simpler with the bishop and the rook to finish. I'm just going to open that in analysis board in a moment, because my initial hunch in this position was rook at h1, and yeah, that's a slower mate. King takes h1, and bishop at f3, and whatever the opponent blocks with, it leads to mate. So I was saying if it blocks with the pawn, you have pawn and queen, and if white blocks with a knight, then you have queen and knight. So this is yeah, he has to take because of the smothered mate. Yeah, so this is the theme I call a smothered mate follow-up, because you have to take. So in order to defend the smothered, so if you're white in this position, before this thing happened, defend f2 is the standard way of defending. So put a bishop on here, and then whenever knight h3 you can sidestep. Because once this g2 square is opened up, there's some nasty attacks. So even you could give up the queen, which is pretty nice. Fumitox against play GM, so we have a whole queen hanging, but taking it will probably get us mated, because queen here, queen takes here. So we have to be smart. We'd have to maybe lure the king to a light square. Yeah, if we could lure the king to a light square, that would be wonderful. So I'm thinking rook here, check, blocks. Yeah, that doesn't work. Okay, so what else? Oh yes, okay, I see what I've seen the idea. So rook here, check, blocks, and we're trying to lure the king to a light square. So if we win the queen with check, and queen d2 is checkmate. Yeah, so that's a postulate that says I didn't realize defending f2 is key. Yeah, because then you can just slide into the corner. So basically the principle is, in order for the smothered mate to work, you either need to defend g1, so if you have a knight on f3, then the smothered mate won't work, or you defend f2, or you defend h3. But sometimes they're mates, even if h3 is defended, if you have 3 knights in hand, you can go via f3, f3, and g3. But maybe I'll show that in I'm not sure if it's going to come up, but imagine I drop a knight on f3 and you slide into the corner, and then I drop another knight on g3, and you can't take with this pawn, otherwise the rook here would be checkmate. I should be doing it on a proper, let's see, on this one. So if I drop a knight on f3 and knight on g3, you can't take with this, but you could take with this. But if I have a third knight, I can then put a rook in the corner, takes, and a knight on f2. Yeah, so the best way of defending smothered mate, defend h3, or defend f2, or defend g1. g1's usually hard to defend, unless you had a knight here, and then that knight could be kicked. So the standard way of defending f2 is you stick a bishop on g3. That's the solid defense. So see, he's got a pawn here, not a bishop here. It makes a big difference. So this one, yeah, so we figured out this, and we're trying to lure the king here. And the way we do it is we put a pawn here, and again, we just can't afford to take this queen, because queen here check, queen takes. So what we do is we take it with check. And if you take a queen with check, it's basically game over. Now, it's not quite game over, because the king can still come here. And I'm thinking knight here check, and he can't take it, or queen g2 is checkmate. But is there something? But knight here check will, if he comes to a light square, he's pretty much finished. Is there something more? The king will come here. What's the clean finish here? At h2, knight h3, yeah, they're all okay. So knight h3, what I was thinking was knight h3, knight g4 is what I was thinking, but yeah, this is not the best. Knight h3, knight f1. Okay, that's sneaky. So you're covering this one off, and takes, king takes, rook at h2, king here. Well, you've drawn the king out, so it's all over. Yeah, so definitely put a bishop on g3 is the standard defense for the smother. Okay, Antique against Gabriele f, and we have a lot of pieces in hand. I notice immediately f2 is sensitive. So pawn at f2 would be just the obvious thing to do, just to draw the king out. And if he can't go into the corner, because otherwise you can just put a rook here, exchange off his back rank defender, and then just put queen, pawn, rook, and it'll be mate. So he kind of has to take it. And now the problem is that queen here and another piece here is basically going to be mate. So if he comes this way, queen here, king has to come here, and then, okay, I should have calculated this properly. I mean, bishop here will certainly lead to mate, but we'll just see. Okay, well here this one's easy. Oh, leads to a slower mate. Okay. Oh, okay. Okay. So the idea is he has to take it, or else I take the blocker, and so this is going to be a smothered mate, like this. But let's just show what would have happened if the king had come this way. And just check for a second. There's a mate in 2. You don't drop the, you drop the rook and then the queen. That's the way to do it. Much cleaner. This way, it's a very thematic idea of just recycling. Now, if king f1, bishop at d3 is a nice move to block off this defense. If he takes, queen here is checkmate, and if he blocks, queen here is checkmate. So that's a really neat way of finishing things off. So of course he goes into the corner, and then the methodology is you recycle off his rook. He's forced to take. King takes, and then you have control of the back rank. So you either put a queen here, pawn here, or just bishop here straight away, and a queen on the back rank. So back rank mate is a really important mating motif, and that's basically what this puzzle is about, this back rank motif. But the way we did it in the puzzle instead was we did a back rank smother. So if he blocks, we take, so he has to take, and we have a knight in the wings waiting to come in. Yeah, and I have a whole series of puzzles about back ranks. So here we have pawn, knight, 2 bishops, and a rook, and it's clear that g7 is the entry point, as it were. So the question is just how to deliver the mate, and I would say rook h8, bishop here, and knight here. Is there anything wrong with that? Or is there anything faster? Because you don't want the king coming out. So if you did knight first, the king could try and run, and it's still getting mated, but this is surely the way to do it. Okay, he wants the pawn. Fair enough. It's the same thing. Okay, so next is going to be Jasonic against In a Few Minutes. And we have a bishop and rook in hand, but notice where's the entry point. And notice where's the king's escape route. So you try and look, where's the king's escape route, where's the entry point. Now there is this as well, but maybe takes and can run. So I like this because it cuts the king off. So it creates a wall, so it covers the escape. And now that's covered, that's covered. So I can go rook here, check, king here, knight here, check, drive him into the corner, and finish off. So notice if you went the other way, knight here would be checkmate. So knight takes pawn check, and pawn here is mate, or rook here is mate. Yeah, it didn't matter, it's just interactive puzzles on Lichess. Don't give options. I've only got a rook in hand. And so you have to examine this king position. There's a wall here. The bishop and the pawn create a wall here, but the king could still run back. So this is a wall, but the king can run back or it can run out. So those are the two avenues. If it does run back, then yeah. So it looks like it's very tempting to take this pawn, put the pawn here. Oh, but then he can take this pawn as well. Yeah, but maybe then we got him in a net. And hang on a second. And the knight seems to be covering. Okay, so we want to drive the king onto a dark square so we can take the knight with check. That's definitely what we want to do. So if we could take that knight with check, that would be nice. So those two squares are blocked, and that square is mined by the knight. Yeah, so yeah, king takes d4 is possible, but that does allow, in the current position, it does allow, for example, the queen to come in or the bishop to come in. So maybe mined, may not be mined. So those two squares are blocked, and that's mined, and that's possibly mined. And this seems, and yeah, this is also blocked by this bishop. So if we had a pawn, we could drop a pawn here. If the king were driven forwards, then maybe queen takes pawn, and another pawn here, and pawn takes knight might eventually lead to mate. But this is not very efficient if we had another pawn. So queen takes pawn is one tempting idea. So by mind, I mean that if he goes to that square, we're getting a knight with check, and he's probably getting mated if we get a knight, because then we can drop the knight on c4, and that diagonal is controlled. And that knight is a wonderful defender. The knight is actually defending all the mates, because we can drop rook on d1 at the end of, possibly. If we can get the king to e1, we can drop a rook on d1 and it's checkmate. So if he loses the knight, I think he's losing this. So that's why I'm thinking about this move here. And because if he just steps back, I'm taking the knight. That's not a good idea. So he's got a choice between taking the bishop and taking the pawn. If he takes the pawn, bishop e2. I'm struggling on this one. So bishop e2, he could take with the knight. So, and then the knight saves itself, and then he can step back to d2 in safety. So we don't have enough attackers. So that's why I'm tempted by this, but he could just take it. Rook here check is possible. If he ever takes here, maybe queen takes. If he ever takes here, queen takes. He could come here, but then I get pawn here, and then I get the knight with check, and that's surely going to be game over. So I don't think this is going to happen. The queen will come in, and we'll get the knight with check with the pawn here. So bishop here, I don't think he wants to take the pawn. I think he wants to stay on light squares. But rook here, he just sidesteps. I could go rook takes knight, pawn takes. Yeah, that's possible. But now I need to mate him with a knight. Saxeter says if this rook here, he can go king b3, and yeah, he's completely safe. Okay, so with only a rook in hand, how do we deal with this? And we have to be careful. We can't just do a quiet move, because queen here is checkmate. Yeah, so yeah, rook at e3 doesn't work. So what is it? Oh yeah, also if he ever does king takes pawn, we can bring our existing knight in. So I think it's fair to say that that these two squares are mined and these two squares are covered. So it's a question of how do I deliver it, and that's what makes queen takes pawn here very tempting. Because then we get a pawn for c4, and then he must land on one of these blue squares. So I think that has to be the answer. Yeah, it is the answer. But yeah, this is quite difficult. Okay, so now we've got a pawn for c4. What? White has... Oh, okay. This puzzle is actually incorrect. Pawn at f3, apparently white is safe here. So this puzzle was actually supposed to be a defensive puzzle for white, so that's why it was causing some confusion. So the point of this is if pawn at c4, king d2. Now c4 is blocked off where I wanted to put my knight. Takes. I don't have knight here anymore. But the point here was if you did take here, then pawn at c4 is working, probably because this square opens up. King d2, takes. Rook at e2, king d1. Well, there's a long mate here, but with pawn here, steps back, takes. Yeah, this actually blocks the bishop's defensive e2. So pawn at f3, so this was actually a defensive puzzle, not an attacking puzzle, which is why it was causing me all kinds of confusion. So, yeah. So pawn at f3 is a very important defensive resource in that position. So what if you just take back the queen like this, then, okay, we're going to have to do this puzzle now. Pawn here, check. Okay, he's done it this way. So we haven't got a lot of choices, because we can either go bishop takes pawn or knight here. And so how do we strategize what we should do? So we have to think, what is the king's escape route? The king's escape route is back here. So I quite like takes, put another pawn here, because this will cut the king from coming up, which a knight wouldn't necessarily cut. So I like this just because you're controlling more squares. Now I want to go a pawn here and take the knight, if maybe. Either take the knight or, yeah, take the knight, because then I can put a rook on this square. No? I was thinking a rook on this square, and then I can take things. Okay, so there's something stronger than rook at e2. Yeah, the bishop, exactly. This f3 blocks this bishop, so this is brilliant. So rook at e2 is an important idea, but there's something stronger first. We can't do a knight check. You could do this. Why would we want to again? Rook at e2 feels right. Okay, I'm gonna ask for the solution. It's apparently taking here. So now again, in any situation, you have to say, where is that king running? It could run here, or here, or here, or here. That's a lot of, and we want to check that controls as many of those squares as possible. I like knight here, pawn here. There might be some ideas. Hi there, gingerbread man. Good afternoon. Take c3, knight at b5, says Apostatlet, perhaps. And Saxeter says, if king d2, rook e2, and if king d2, rook e2, and knight c3 mate. Ah, yes, very nice. So knight b5 stops the king running up. So if he runs back, he should be toast, you would think, with like a pawn here and knight here. So that very nice from Apostatlet. And if king d2, rook e2, and then knight comes in, checkmate. So he's forced to run up, and that's going to be trouble. Okay, well, so why is it going to be trouble? Let's just think a second. So knight here, he's forced to run up, and then we can probably just play something simple like this, and if he takes the knight, or whatever he does, we just put a rook on this square as checkmate. So very nice. So he does run back, and we get the mate that that Oppa was mentioning in the chat. Okay, that was a bit difficult. Okay, so this one, I have to admit I've seen this. The idea of this one is you have to open up G7, and I actually claim knight H6 is a longer mate, but it's more natural. But I'll just show you what the mate is here, because it's kind of a bit ridiculous. So the point is, if you take the bishop, queen takes, pawn check, and pawn here is checkmate because the bishop's covering off this square. So you have to step back, but then queen takes, and he has to go rook takes, and now we have a mate with a knight and a pawn. So that's the mate that Kleerkast wanted. But I'm going to claim that actually knight at h6 is much more natural. So obviously if you sidestep queen at g8 is mate, so you take it. And now just simply take this knight. And if rook takes, we have a very standard mate. Knight here check, king here, pawn here check, king takes pawn, knight here check. If king steps back, queen g7 is mate, so steps up, and queen d7 is now mate. Now what's the difference between this and dropping a knight here? So dropping a knight here allows us to drop a knight here, and that knight swings back. If we do it the other way around, as this puzzle suggests, dropping a knight here first and then here, we can never swing back because this bishop takes it. So I actually think, my goodness. So my computer just went to sleep. I'm hopefully back. So I think this is actually much nicer. So you go here, then you take here. So because rook takes doesn't work, he has to do king takes. And now you just seal him in, basically. Seal him in, and he might do something like this, but yeah, that's getting mated soon enough. And the point is, you put a knight here and swing back. A knight here, a pawn here, and swing back. So if king takes f8, so you seal him up. Okay, this is apparently the most difficult, because then you have to do takes, but he has no pieces around his king, so he won't last very long. He's trying to do this, and then you go, this is a very standard idea. If you take, queen here, mate. If you go here, queen here is mate. And if you just block, then obviously just queen here and pawn here is mate. Okay, this one, okay, yes, I remember this. So this is, you take this rook because if this gets taken, okay, so I should just start at this position. I'm going to take this rook, because if this gets taken back, then rook at g1, king here, and I already have a rook in hand. The second rook that I've just taken on e1, queen takes, rook takes is a hook mate. So queen takes rook is actually, he can't take it back. That's why this is so nice. So queen takes rook, can't take it back, so he has to block. And now it's looking very close to a smother. If we did this, he'd kind of run here and take here, and then suddenly he's safe. So what we do is we have to smother him up first here, but it's not quite a smother because he can run out, but not for very long because the king here, bishop here is checkmate. Okay, so this is, we've got 3 knights in hand, and we do the standard thing when we have all these knights. We just try and open up g2. But how to continue? Because so we've got a pawn, 2 knights, a bishop, and a queen. So how to continue? So, and notice we have to mate here. If we don't mate, then a queen is landing on g7 or h8 and will get mated. So we need something really, really forcing. So we have to keep the check. I'm just trying to think, how do we keep the check? So if we go queen here, takes, that feels like we're giving up too much. So do we have a better idea of how we can use our knights? I have an idea. And Oppa's seen it. It's like there's only one way to really keep it going, which is what Oppa says. Knight here and queen at h1. And he has to take the queen, because if he goes here, there's just queen takes rook, king here. Okay, why can I not quite see the mate? Yeah, so queen takes rook, king here, king here, and then knight here is checkmate. So the queen on here and the knight here will be cutting off the king's escape route if the king had stepped up. So if the king steps up, we take the rook, queen here, king here, and then knight here is checkmate. Okay, so at least we're clearing away the rook, so we're keeping it going. Okay, excellent. So now we still have a pawn, a knight, a bishop, and a rook in hand. As Oppa says, we have to keep the tempo. So we had to literally sack everything just to clear away the material. And there was no other way of keeping checks. And now, do we take the bishop or do we try and do something cunning with this and this? And if bishop takes, rook here, king here, knight here, doesn't quite feel right. So, because I want to get my rook on the 7th rank rather than on the second rank rather than the first rank. So I think I take, because I want my rook on the 2nd rank. I think. Hi there, Train Flipper. So Legion actually helped collect these puzzles with Kleerkast. So how to continue? I mean, my instinct is bishop here, but maybe pawn here. Pawn here. The idea is you put a rook, and even if he takes the pawn, you have a bishop. So maybe a pawn here. No. So try and get extra material. Okay. So he steps back. Okay. Then pawn here, check. Okay. So I could put a rook on the back rank. But then the king comes here, and I don't see another knight check. So, but if I do knight here check, king here or king takes. If king takes, there might be some discovery. So knight here, king here, then what? Oh, there's also just clear away the attacker with rook here. Yeah, rook at f1, clear away the attacker. Apparently not. Takes. Okay, so let's see. Oh, what about knight e2? Knight e2 forces this, and then so Train Flipper says this one is all Kleerkast. Okay, yeah. So if knight e2, king f2, how are we going to keep this? Okay, so what about rook here, king here? Is there a knight? I can't see a knight check. So if the king went here, you might want a knight there. So, what if we did something like bishop here takes and then knight here, and then draw and then promote, that kind of thing? Seems crazy. Does that work? Seems like it would work. I'm gonna have a look at the solution because I'm not seeing why. So some sort of double check, maybe cutting off the rook. No, the other double check. Nope. Sorry, this is very bad. Okay, what's the knight e2? Knight e2, and getting the rook on the second rank is good. Oh, and then we have control of this. I'm gonna have to. I'm gonna backtrack in a second to try and figure out what I did wrong. But knight here check, and then we can go knight takes pawn check, and then we get a pawn, which we can promote for sure. So yeah, pawn here and promote with check is going to be winning. But okay, this is very difficult. So let's just back that up. So far so good. Takes. I had to be a bit careful that I can't just go at f3. Don't quite have enough material apparently. So if takes, bishop here, probably king here is the problem. Yeah, exactly. King e2, and the thing is I don't have another diagonal. So that's why it's important to go here. And any blocker I take, king f1, pawn here, king g1. So rook at f1 seemed like a good idea. Knight at e2 apparently intermezzo is another way of doing things. King takes, but we don't quite have enough to keep that. Maybe it's a draw or something. Apparently, knight takes g. Well, I think maybe there is a mate, just hasn't seen it yet. Takes at g2, king e2, and the king is running. Yeah, there's a mate, but it's just too difficult for the computer to see. Bishop at d1, king d2, because the king can never go onto the back rank. So this is pretty fun that there is a mate here. Rook at f2, king c1, rook takes c2, king b1, rook c5. You just back up the rook. And if he blocks, then we take it, and he tries to hide in the corner. Oh, hang on, white has got mate here. What? this is very bad. What did I do wrong? Rook takes c2, king b1, rook c5. Oh, that's it. Of course, yeah. You have to take with the other bishop, of course, so that we can promote our queen. Okay. Yeah, bishop takes c2 and g1. Yeah, so he tries to run away, but g1 is getting a queen, and you could take, and come here and it's checkmate. So yeah, rook at f1 does work, but knight at f3 takes, knight d2, go here. So, and then the other idea had, what was wrong with bishop here check, king takes, and knight at h1? That felt like it was strong because we're getting a rook on the second rank, and it is winning, but the move I missed is this. I don't have a pawn. So this would even be mate. If I just had one pawn, it would be mate, but I don't have a pawn. So that was a very strong idea, but I needed a second diagonal for it to work. So this doesn't need a second diagonal. Knight d2, rook at g2, knight comes back to f3, and then the line it didn't show is that what if the king comes this way? Then you go here check, takes here check, and here mate. And if he comes the other way, then it's mate as well. So that's why he can't go running over to the other side. So instead he has to come this side, but then we get a pawn with check, which is key because then we're promoting. So the king goes somewhere, we're promoting with check, and there's no defense because so even if he defends with if he defends with the queen, then king takes queen f1, and if he doesn't defend with the queen, then there's queen here check, and queen takes here. So what if instead he does king f2? Says Oppa. And we still need to keep the checks. So how do we continue now? Because I'm not looking at the engine, I'm thinking. Yeah, how to keep the checks after queen f2. I think I'm still thinking rook here, but if this, then this. That's my feeling. So if he doesn't, rook f1, if he doesn't take it, if he just goes here, then this is a simple mate. Knight d2, defending the rook, and bishop takes his checkmate. So always looking at the nice, easy forcing moves first. Okay. But now I'm looking at the engine, apparently that's okay, but there's something better, which is rook at d2. Rook at d2. Okay. Next. Bishop at g1. Okay. What's the idea? Ah. Pick up that rook with check. Pick up the rook with check. And that rook is probably landing on the second rank. Or on the first rank, not quite sure which. Bishop at e2. King to d2. It looks like the king is running, but it can't run too far because I have rook here check, king here, knight here check, king here. Oh, I've got this one. Check, king here, and then this is checkmate. So pretty difficult line. Oh, there's another way of doing it apparently, which is simpler, which is just this and this. Okay, I didn't see that. I was trying to bring the knight in, because knights take time to get in, so you have to keep, the reason I was so desperate to play knight here is because if the king goes out of range, that knight is then out of the attack forever. So I was like, let's bring it in now. Okay. Chapter 19 was Gingerbread Man, who's in the chat, against Flourish. And it looks like black is fairly well defended. How are we gonna break through? Yeah, so this is just a hard one, basically. We have 2 knights, 2 pawns, and a queen. Apostat there says, can I show the line that Oppa mentioned? I thought I did. So this was 264 Brock against In a Few Minutes. I'm just going to put it up in... I've actually made a solution study as well, so let's see. That's the April study. That's my study. That's the solution study. Okay. So maybe I'll try and put up the position here. Okay, so takes, bishop here, pawn here, knight here. Okay, so I should have added the line king f2, king f2, rook at d2. No, not rook at d2. Rook at d2, not rook at e2. Rook at d2 blocks with something, say blocks with the bishop. Bishop at g1. Obviously if this, then we just takes and put a pawn in the corner, and put a pawn on g2, and that's mate. So he has to take this bishop. So then we take, and take with check. And if he comes here, then just rook here is checkmate. So he has to start running away from us. And so you want the line after. So you want the line where he's trying to run away. So I think so what was the so he's trying, he could run this way or this way. I'm trying to remember. So this way we bring our knight back in, I guess. So maybe he tries to go to d1 because that makes our life a little bit more difficult. And then we go bishop e2. Yep. King here, knight here, king here. Oh, so bishop e2 is not needed, says Oppa. So the point that we want to bring our so bishop e2. Okay, so you just go directly with this. Okay, so but then knight here, king c3. So then there's a boring mate, which is rook here check. There's a wall. The boring mate, which we showed, was this, and then the fun mate was this check, this check, this, and this. So I think I showed that the first time. Did I miss anything out? Yeah, so I think I think that's what I so this and if white goes here, you just add in an extra bishop here and then we get the same line, knight f3. Oh, if he takes the bishop, then that's also not very good. So he has to try and run out. He can't run back because rook here is mate. So what else could he do here? King here, knight here. He can't run back like this because he'll be back rank mated with the bishop. So it's all very. But okay, this is quite hard to see, the whole rook at d2 idea. And you can play it in a different order as well. So is that okay? I've lost that. Need to delete the rook at e2. You bring your knight in and you put your rook on c4. There's a wall, and that's the easy way of mating. But there's a more fun way of mating, which is to try and bring that knight in, because knights are short-range pieces. So you have to bring it in before the king is out of range. So it's controlling things. And now we finish off the mate with a bishop here, or bishop takes pawn. Yeah, I did, because I didn't see the shorter mate. So I mean, I was trying to bring the knight in. I wasn't actually using engine when I was doing that. I just saw it myself. Nice how it covers a3, this knight. Yes, pretty sweet. Okay, so gingerbread man against flourish. Okay, so bit of a spoiler. I think I've seen this one. It's a crazy clearance. So knight here check. The point is, if the king ever comes here, the queen comes in, and we have another queen in hand, and he's finished. So he tries to run away. So again, pawn here. If he ever takes, we've got queen takes, and we got him under control. And here we just clear away the back rank, and we actually control this e8 square. So this is checkmate. And there's some other lines, but basically anything else will if he tries, going back to the beginning again, if he tries, let's see, it's probably the sort of thing. If he tries to go king e7 directly, we just try and rip open his king side. So takes, takes. So he's got nowhere to go. And if he does run away, then we can do it. Yeah, if he ever takes this, we just go queen takes. And there's actually quite a nice idea here. He now has to go here, and it looks like this bishop is defended, so we don't have an obvious mate. But if we could get a queen, if we could get the king here or here, and a queen here or here, it's mate. So what we do is we throw away our knight, and he can't go to either of these squares because a queen landing would be made. So he has to take it somehow. And then we put a pawn here check. And if he goes here, this is mate. And if he goes here, queen here is mate. And Oppa asks, is queen at g8 mate? So what's the idea? Rook takes. We have a knight in hand. Knight at c7. And if this, then we can draw the king out. Queen takes d6, king d8, and this whole idea, knight e6. Knight e6, if he takes it, pawn here takes rook will be mate. So he probably has to do this, but then we can take the rook and put a rook on here, and it's probably mate. So he has to try and block somehow. The thing is, if he blocks, we have rook here, and queen comes back, it's checkmate. So in this line, he has to go, he can't go to f8, but he can apparently go here, and then we go knight here, check, and again, if he dares to take this, he will be getting mated with pawn at c7, takes and takes. But he has a sneaky draw idea by just of just going back. So knight here, check, just step back very quietly, and so black would get a draw. So say that again. So if at here, if he took it, he'd get mated, but he can go here, and if the knight then tries to check, then you lose your queen. So it doesn't quite work. So yeah, the queen has got problems because it's under attack. You can't go this, just blocks. So white doesn't quite have enough. Gingerbread Man says, I would love to try this match again. So this was a match against Flourish. Yeah, Flourish is tough though, but yeah. I think also Flourish can be quite well prepared sometimes, and he's very good in time scrambles, I find. So okay, that was a tough position. The next one. So I noticed that the king is in a box, can't come back. It's only got one square it can go to. So it's tempting to do moves like this, trade queens, and the king is very open, and that might work. But with 3 pawns in hand, he's actually completely under control because we got the double check, which he can't block. He has to step back, and now we're controlling the dark squares. So we just need to control the light squares, and he's finished. And Zaraza against Jazzy, and here basically anything works. You just need to, we have a bishop and queen in hand, we just need to, literally everything works. So this is a kind of, takes, as I'm not even sure what the answer is, because you could take here, or you could put a bishop here, or you could put a bishop here, and everything works, because all you need to do is just get the king, control all these light squares and push the king onto the back rank. So this is sort of, let's see. So the reason I was saying pawn takes pawn works, suppose he takes it, then we're going to put a bishop here, and if he tries to step out, then okay, it's getting a bit more complicated than I hoped. I was thinking queen at e6, king here. Okay, this is getting a bit messy. Okay, so if we can go king here if necessary, so he has to step back, get an extra pawn, takes here, here, and pawn at b4. Okay, so okay, this maybe not the cleanest way of doing things, but the point of this is that even if you do this, takes bishop here, steps back, we have a pawn. It seems like we're lacking because we need another pawn to get on the back rank, but we're not lacking. You just go pawn here, king here, and bishop here, and now we're controlling the square. Takes, and we're controlling the square. But okay, well, that's just to show that everything works. Obviously, this is even stronger, supported by this. Takes, and if he goes here, queen here is mate. If he goes here, pawn here is mate. So that's the quickest mate. But basically, everything works. Even bishop here will work. Same idea. You're stopping the king from running back. If he tries to do this, just take it. Take it, here, and queen at f7. Yep, as Oppa says. Okay, so those were the March puzzles from Kleerkast. Then there was also a set of puzzles for April, which I can continue with. So this just is often, if casting queenside is very dangerous because a heavy can land in the corner, and here you've got to smother even. I'm losing my voice, so I'm not sure if I should continue with all these April puzzles, or whether I should move into just showing you solutions and showing you Crazyhouse themes. So So okay, let's say there's another set for April. Check out Kleerkast's profile on Lichess. Maybe I'm going to switch to not showing the analysis and showing you a whole bunch of positions, and we're going to go quite quickly. Oh, this should not be already shown. We're going to go quite quickly just to show some really important mating motifs in Crazyhouse. So we've been practicing, we've done our warm-ups, and now we're just going to just show examples of these Crazyhouse motifs. And most of them will be familiar. I mean, all of them will be familiar to you, but for people who are new to Crazyhouse, there might be some new ideas like the magnet mate and so on. Okay, so this was a mate Kleerkast found against dog answer. And again, if you've been watching my streams, you'll have seen a lot of these mates already. That's why I'm just going to zip through them quite quickly. So the point of this is to refresh the patterns and just show you the pretty patterns. And why are these already? They shouldn't be. Yeah, not quite sure why. Because I don't want it to be, yeah, I want to start at the beginning of a puzzle rather than at the end of a puzzle. Okay, so using knights in combination. What about this one? So I'm not trying to solve it, but this and this looks very dangerous because the king can't step back because the knight is controlling the light square, so it has to step forwards. But if it steps forwards, you have a pawn and a bishop in hand. Notice the bishops can check backwards. So if he ever goes here, you want a bishop for that square. So probably a pawn for this square. If he steps here, bishop for this square. And if he steps here, pawn for this square, and it's checkmate. So this is like using your bishops and knights to their maximum ability. This is another example of this. The finisher mating Kleerkast with, well, it's a slight variation, but it's the same idea. Two knights, you drop a knight, get the other knight in, and at some point that king is forced up to g3. If it goes down, pawn here is checkmate. So, but then your bishop here, pawn here, checkmate. So this sort of combination, your knights on f3 and h4 combining control everything. It's sealing the king in a box. This knight controlling this square. The king cannot run. And as a last example of diagonals and knights, actually a missed mate, Zixon against Janny. Jan did not play this mate, but it would have been very pretty, which is to use your knights to drive the opponent up the board, and then we have no pieces in hand. How do we finish this? Okay, I need to think a second because I don't want to look. Oh yes, this is coming if we need it. So if we need it, we have that, but this square is under control. Okay, so, but we'll win a pawn. We'll win a pawn by doing that. Okay, that's the point. We'll win a pawn. So g6, the point is, if you takes, if you ever go here, basically we're taking and that's just mate. So you might as well go here, but then you've got that pawn and this is checkmate. Actually, if you go here, there's another mate that you can also go rook here, check, and this checkmate. But the point of this was actually knights and bishops, so that's why I want to focus on this. So we're taking here. Okay, so king g5. Oh, you don't do this. Yeah. You don't do this straight away because then the king can escape. So you first go f6, and then you take here, and whatever white does, whatever white blocks with, bishop takes is checkmate. Okay, so the first few of these examples is just like how to coordinate pieces. So how to coordinate knights, how to coordinate knights with bishops, and this one is how to is the hook mate. And this is a beautiful mate. Zaraza found this mate. Zaraza mates play GM with this mate. So it's pawn here, and the point is the rook takes. Rook here is checkmate. It's a hook mate. Knights supporting a rook. So play GM played king takes, and Zaraza delivered the rest of the mate, which is knight g5. The king can't step up because rook here is checkmate, so it steps down. But then just pawn here, check, and wherever the king goes, rook at g2 is checkmate. So it was a very beautiful mate Zaraza played. Apostat says, yeah, nice use of the opponent's bishop. Yeah, so it's, and we'll come back to that. It's blocking the opponent's escape route. Yeah, which is a very important theme as well. So notice a lot of these themes at the moment are, and that was intentional, are standard chess themes. So we've looked at piece coordination. The hook mate is a very standard chess theme. So here we're going to have another hook mate apparently. So how do we've got a pawn, a knight, a queen. I'm thinking no, because we don't control this square. So pawn here, knight here. No. Oh, this is just crazy. Yeah. Okay, so the point is knight here, and you can't take it because queen here would be checkmate. This is the power pose between the two knights. The two knights control all of these squares. So king here is forced, and then pawn here, king takes is forced. Swing the knight back, and we're threatening to mate. And if the king steps up, then it's just knight takes d7, and if the king comes here, queen here is mate, and if the king takes the knight, then queen here is mate. So that's all very easy. So maybe he tries to make a run for it, but then we can pick up a nice juicy rook, which seems like a good idea. And what if he blocks? If he blocks with the bishop, say, I still don't see this to the end, because if we take bishop here, he could start trying to run again. Oh, I just seen it. Knight here. The same power pose again, and if he takes it, rook here is checkmate. So he runs instead, and if he runs, then we get the hook mate. Rook at e8, takes, and takes is checkmate. So the point is the knight is supported by a pawn, and the rook or queen is supported by the knight. So pawn supports knight, supports queen. Very common in standard chess, and the king can't run this way because of the pawn as well. So lots of ideas actually in this puzzle. The power pose, the draw and push. I call this draw and push because you draw the king out and then you push him back. Hi there, Yalao, or my son never called me. Knight c6 again. Yes, you saw it. Nice. That's really impressive because I'm doing these as fast as I can, just showing, and I've seen them before. So we're trying to go over some mating motifs, and the first thing is just piece coordination. But as we go look at piece coordination, we're seeing some more advanced Crazyhouse ideas. So this is all about queen knight coordination. So Gingerbread Man says about that previous puzzle, could we do the more obvious thing, which is this and this? Yeah, I mean that would be more natural. So takes, knight f5 here, and then we can go here, takes. Are we winning this? Yes, we are winning it eventually. So queen here, king here, queen. So you don't. If you take this, you lose. Whoa! If you take this, you lose. That's some. Yeah, you have to, because then the king gets out of reach of your knights. So you have to do this to open up. Ah, I see. Because. But what if he just does king b8 though? Because if he does king b8, see, your knights are still in range, and when your knights are in range, it's very dangerous. b6 takes, knight b8 check, king takes, and queen here checkmate. So you have to keep your knights in range. That's some really serious ideas here. And the point of this is, if you just take it, then queen takes, and we picked up a pawn, and we have a very standard mate here, which is the do we promote to knight actually here? Why don't we promote to knight? I'm sort of, maybe I'm being dim. Oh, king b8. Oh, oops, and we don't have a mate. So just promoting to queen is good. Promoting to queen with check and take all the blockers. So yeah, I'm glad you brought that up, Gingerbread Man, because I thought maybe he's getting away, and he would get away if you just took here. You just run away and your knight's out of range. This is a really important principle. Even top players, like there's a really beautiful mate Jan Lee missed against Opera a couple of weeks ago. He didn't keep his knights in range, and it's just so important to keep those knights in range where they can do damage, and they're short range pieces, so you need to keep them in the action. Yeah. So promotion to knight. So you have to be sent. Yeah. So knight takes pawn. This is quite incredible. This whole sequence. He had to take with this, and then we need some kind of move with the knight, and just doing this. So the reason why this is so nice is because if you try and block like so, you actually have this checkmate. Isn't that gorgeous? So there's no block. There's no like just block and take everything. It's like actually I'm threatening mate with knight b8. Yeah, I've actually noticed because Jan Lee hasn't been playing as much as usual. He hasn't he's been missing some of these like knight maneuvers that normally are second nature to him. Yeah, if there's time, I'll. So queen and knight combination. I mean, I don't know if I should look at this, but there was a. Let's see. It was not bookmarks. It was an imported game. Janley variation. Which one is it? Because I was trying all these Janley variations. It wasn't against Dog Answer, it was against Opera. So, yeah, this is it. Janley variation against Opera. And I should really look at it from White's perspective, I think. And I think I made a little GIF of this. So what would happen in the game was pawn here, king here, bishop here, stuff like this. And he didn't bring his knights in. So the correct approach was knight e6 check, king d7, bring the other knight in here, 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 and this is checkmate. That's and just to say, the reason why you can't just go this way, obviously, is because then this promote and this is checkmate. Hang on a second. There's even better. There's knight here, check, king here, knight here, checkmate. So this is like the cavalry. You bring the cavalry in. You just don't mess with the cavalry. They just yeah. So and so yeah, Janley had this potential mating sequence against Oppa, but completely ended up losing this game because he didn't move his knights with the attack. And also in one of his CWC matches, again, he didn't move the knights with the attack. So it's something, yeah. So queen and knight combination. So this is nice. Queen and knight, and okay, so that he could go here to try and keep hold of this pawn, but this also doesn't work because a rook takes pawn, king takes knight, queen here, and queen here, checkmate. But the nice queen knight combination, and Crazyhouse players will see this instantly, and so they'll see it when it comes up in standard chess, is this combination. So queen takes pawn, blocks, queen takes pawn, king here, knight takes pawn, so the knight supporting the queen and then comes in, and queen here, checkmate. He was low on time for sure, but that's normal. It was a bullet game, but still, it would have been nice if that had happened in the game. Yeah, so this pattern is very important. It happens a lot. This knight and queen, and I think I was mated last night with one of these knight and queen. The knight and queen moving together across the board. Okay, so now about a Crazyhouse theme about which I have done a video on. So the two Crazyhouse themes I've done videos on specifically. One is the back rank mate, very important in standard chess, very important in Crazyhouse, and the other just yesterday was a cookie crumb, very unusual in standard chess, but very important in Crazyhouse, and we'll come to that later. So this is a back rank mate. The knight is covering the 7th rank, so whatever he blocks with, he's stuck on the back rank, and there's a mate. And I'm calling a back rank mate anything where he's sort of stuck on the back rank. This is a missed mate. As I said, if people have been watching my streams, they'll probably have seen these already, so that's why I'm going pretty quickly, just to show you these beautiful positions. It's queen here check. If the king goes into the corner, there's a very nice knight here check and rook here checkmate. So the king instead might go to g1, but then there's a simple back rank mate with at f2, and if here there's king g1, so here, oh, and then rook h2, yeah. Sorry, that was Kleerkast again. Yeah, so Dog Answer missed that mate against Kleerkast. So now another back rank mate, and this is Antic missed mate against Katask, and you have to take your chances against Katask. So Antic played the right first move, which is to clear away the back rank defender. Very nice. And now he had a choice. Do I go with H2 or F2? And the problem is with F2 is that keeps that knight out of the game. Is that right? Yeah, F2 keeps the knight out of the game. F7, sorry, keeps the knight out of the game because the knight could come potentially to F7. By going H7, it means that the king goes into the corner, straight away checkmate. But if he comes this way, he picks up the rook with check, and he's got checkmate. So this was the I mean, obviously he had probably less than 10 seconds on the clock or something, but still, this was really important. Which pawn do I drop? And of course, if you take, it's even simpler. Just pawn here, check, and back rank. So it's a very nice back rank mate that he had against Katask. Okay, now this is an amazing back rank mate that Zixon found against Blitzbullet. He cunningly put his bishop along this diagonal. Blitzbullet dropped a pawn here. And as I said, if you've been watching my streams, you'll have seen all this already, but hopefully you won't be too bored even so. And the idea here is there's a smothered mate, so like this, if you don't take that knight. So you do have to take the knight. But the problem if you take the knight, and then this is another theme which we're going to come to later, there's something called a magnet. Sorry, Apostat, yes, he asks a good question, which I haven't dealt with. Is it still winning after at F7? It is, but it's just very tricky. So at F7, so obviously you can't go here because knight takes rook is mate, so you have to go here. And then there are a few ways, so one probably way of finishing it, which is probably the neatest, is just get rid of that knight defender. And now you've cleared away the F7 square again for that knight. This is not the shortest mate, but it's just the clearest. And if he goes here, knight here is checkmate, and if he goes here, there's the mate we said earlier. So that's the clearest approach. The other approach apparently is, again, just clear away that F7 square to bring your knight in. And with you have enough pieces here to finish things off. So at H6, King G8, pushing the king to G8, and then rook at H8 is mate. So it's very important to get that knight into the game because you want to keep this knight controlling this square, so you want to bring the other knight in. So yeah, thanks again for. So he hadn't lost it yet, but unfortunately in this position he didn't find the right move, which was either doing this or putting a rook here. So I think he might have, I can't remember what he did, but yeah, so it had to, be recycle again or promote, and there is a point in promoting because now the bishop is not defending the king as well. So this one really beautiful. So we start off with knight takes f2. We've already said he has to take it or there's a smothered mate. Okay, this is a very, although this is supposed to be back rank, we're getting already quite complicated. We use a magnet. We draw the king into danger. And now if I were a beginner, I would just instantly take that rook and then think, I'd take the rook and then think what to do next. Okay, but the thing about this position is, okay, the back rank is weak. Because this rook has come off the back rank is weak. When you have a back rank and a diagonal, a queen is a very powerful piece, because it's controlling both this square and this square. So this is just lethal. So if you just blocked with a knight, the queen can just march in. Invasion, queen invasion. So there are lots of like sub-themes. And if you just block, then you have a back rank mate. Bishop takes rook, king here. And what happened in the game was rook at g1, but maybe even nicer sort of thematically is you just take that rook and dump the rook on g1. So yeah, we're going to call this the Zixon mate from now on. I think this concept of a queen helped by a diagonal controlling a back rank. It's a very, very common idea. And then we saw another example of it, and as I said, we discussed this on a previous stream in Burp Cow against Bugzilla. Burp Cow missed this. You can't take like this because very simple. So you do have to take that queen with the king. And now what you have to do is you have to keep the king on the back rank. So bishop here, check, keeps the king on the back rank. Rook here, check. You don't want to go bishop here because I just take it and it's mate. So that's why you have to drop the queen. And at this point you could very easily be stuck because you have no continuation. You can take the queen, sure, but then he just takes back. But the really genius move here was rook here, check, no blocker, so he has to take it. And you do gain something from that because by taking it, now this square is weak. So what you do is now you take here, and suddenly there's no back rank. So this square is weak. So bishop takes e7 is probably mating now. So you take the queen, bishop d7 is probably mating. It is mating, in fact, but there is a much more beautiful way of finishing it off, which is the Zixon approach. Knight here, you can't just sidestep because queen here will be mate. Get the queen on the back rank. If you block with the rook, again, just take with here, then take the rook, and the rook on the back rank is mate. And if you block with any other piece, then this queen marches in with the queen invasion. So the rook at h8 was genius because it deflected the knight from protecting this very important square. As Oppa says, rook h8, absolutely brilliant move. Anyway, I think these are highlights for a reason. They're all really amazing. Yeah, so of course bishop takes e7 was also mate, but this is just even prettier to do it with the what I will call now a Zixon approach. Put the queen on the back rank, controlling the 7th rank square. It's just very beautiful. Very, very beautiful way of doing it. But okay, that was a missed mate from Burp Cow. But this is what I call a back rank smother mate threat. Yeah, this was a missed mate by Burp Cow against 264 Brock. He's doing really well in this position. White only has a queen. So you seal the guy off, and notice if that doesn't really work because here, this is kind of crazy. Rook takes f1, and he can't take with the knight because otherwise he's smothered. So he has to take with the king, but then boom, it's back rank mate. So really, really beautiful. This bishop at c3 to just keep the king on the back rank. So okay, so he just blocks. Now you take the knight. Notice if knight takes, yeah, knight takes is going to be complicated. If king takes, you go rook at h1, blocks, and he only has heavies to block with, so he has to block with the rook, and then you draw him out and you have a back rank mate. So this is why even in this position it'd be hard. Okay, so you keep him on the back rank, you then take here. If knight takes, then suddenly it's not so clear. But if king takes, you go rook, take again, knight here, and it's a back rank mate. If knight takes, turns out there is no direct mate, but you have a very cunning little move. Just this bishop is under attack, just back it off, keeping the king in a box. The king is in a box. Knight g2, knight at g2 is a mate threat, rook at d1 is a mate threat, and fortunately my king is not about to get mated in one move with the rook and queen. So there's no way of defending both this mate and this mate. So white has no defense. Yeah, white has no threat, and so end of game. So just to back up the whole position, so rook takes knight also strong, but just keep the king in the box and then take the knight and back off was the approach. Or if you king takes, you have direct mate, or if king takes bishop, there was direct mate with rook d2. The knight's pinned. So okay, remember when back rank mate is such a simple theme, but it can still be quite complicated. And Oppa says if you had a rook in hand, rook g8 would be mate. Yes, because this, then this, or this would be very. If you had a knight in hand, sorry, yeah. Yeah, so should we try this out? So bishop here. So imagine if we did this and sorry, not this. If we did this and this and then this and this. Okay, so Oppa says rook at g8 is mating because we can't take here because of this, so we take here. And I was thinking this, but actually, of course, just this. Yeah, I'm being completely stupid. So if this pawn at g6 and queen h7 is mate, so I sidestep. I'm trying desperately to save my life. And knight here check, king takes bishop, and a pawn mates. Yep, very nice, Oppa. Okay, so this is Oppa Wazen against Kleerkast. Kleerkast had a very beautiful mate here as black. He still had castling rights. So simply castles. You can block to delay one move. You can't come forward because everything is controlled. Castles, all of these squares are controlled. So in the original position here, the king can run here. So how do you check while also covering the g7 square? Answer, castles. You can block, but come sit. So king's only got one square, and then got to be careful because if bishop here, king comes back. So, boom, checkmate. Yes. He saw that he missed castles. He typed oops in the chat, and then Oppa as white lost on time, so black won anyway. So yeah. Now, very simple one, but really good one for beginners is whenever you're looking at a position, look at the escape squares. So the escape square is here and here. So do we have checks? Do we have checks that block off the escape squares? And the answer is yes. Queen here, checkmate. The knight already covers here, and the queen covers the two other escape squares. Oh, yeah, so there was another line Oppa was mentioning. So what actually happened in the game? What happened in the game was... So what did happen in the game? Was it bishop here, king g7, bishop f6, and if you take, then you still got the same mate, so he has to go king h6. No, I can't remember what happened. Yeah, so you'd have to go king h6. I'm confused. Can we still castle? Is that too dangerous? Yeah, that's too dangerous. That's quite funny, actually. Queen at g6. So we can't take it because this is checkmate. And we have no blockers. Oops. That's a bad way to lose. So yeah, how do we continue here? Apparently we can just take here and we don't have mate, but okay. But yeah, losing, but you don't have much material, so it's got to be careful. Okay, so we're now going to turn on to covering the escapes. So this is now we saw a very easy example. Now a really tough example. How is white getting away? Look, the bishop is covering, the pawn is covering. This one. How is the king getting away? Like this. So what do? you have to play this move. Stop that king from getting to safety. And now, how do you... again, the king wants to run this way. How do you stop it? And the answer is either a knight here, which could pick up a queen potentially, or actually even neater is like a knight here. Whether he takes it or not, he can't run back to d2. So suppose he takes it. And now it's just very pretty. We just drop a knight on... we've got two knights in hand. Drop a knight on g2. He comes back here. Drop a knight on h3. And the king is trapped. Those three knights. So the way to think about it is those two knights control all of these squares. And then this knight as well stops the king. Which together with this pawn is controlling these three squares. So covering the escape route. This is now Burp-Cow against Kleerkast. And we only have a pawn in hand. And this knight's an important piece. So the move is actually queen out here to protect this knight. And you could... so the problem what was played in the game was queen here, but then the king could just come here and... the king could sort of come here and maybe take the knight, and white didn't quite have enough material. But queen here from Burp-Cow would have put Kleerkast in a real difficult situation, because rook here comes next. The rook can just take any blockers. If the king ever comes here, the knight comes in, and this is leading to checkmate with the pawn here. And if the king goes directly to b7, simply queen takes pawn, and pawn here is checkmate. Oh, see you, Gingerbread Man. Yep. It was supposed to be a short stream, but I'm going to have to try and go as quickly as possible to show these really good ideas. Okay, now this has just happened yesterday. Variance only against 264 Brock. Instead of covering escape, the idea here is blocking an escape route. And the safe square for the king, it turns out, is surprisingly on a8. The reason why it's safe is because you want to take this pawn with the bishop, after which you can't also take it with the knight. So the beautiful move here, and you'll see why, is put a queen here, knight here check, bishop takes pawn check, pawn here check, pawn here checkmate. Now, if that rook were back here, the king could just slide in to a8, and white could be facing a counterattack. Yeah, really beautiful. I think all of these are really, really beautiful. I hope. Yeah, I've chosen the best here, really the best. Knight here check, pin. So the next Crazyhouse theme I want to talk about are pins. Again, this is just same in standard chess. It's a very important theme. Master Sir missed this mate against Guga, mate in 2, but he did go on to win this game. Kleerkast against Dog Answer. I see a double check. I'm confused. Yeah, the reason I'm confused is the board's the wrong way around. So I was thinking for white instead of for black. Yeah, this is a really nice example. So what was played in the game was queen at e2, and that turned out to be a mistake. We'll see why in a second. You exploit the pin. You move the queen out the way, and now whatever piece is dropped there is pinned. So it's a very simple mate, exploiting the pin. Okay, unfortunately what happened in the game, we'll come to this, is in the defense section, is a queen was dropped here, and then white has a defense. So another pin. This is Dog Answer mating Blitz Bullet. It was a very nice attack. And the rook is defending this knight. So remember, this diagonal is wonderful. But what you do is you do takes, put a new queen on here, and because of the pin, suddenly this comes. You could take this pawn, but then this takes, and if you ever step back, that's a bad idea, because this is mating you. So you have to step forwards. But if you step forwards, then you're losing the rook with check. And then I think I'm seeing a mate, because if king here, rook here, and if king here, rook here, king here, and rook here is checkmate. So it all came about because of this in the original position, because of this pin of the rook on f7. And if you looked at Crazyhouse 960 stream I did, the highlights of Crazyhouse 960, there's a very nice example of the pin in the missed mate between me and G. Rogers. Okay, the next theme I'll talk about is deflection. Deflection. And this was a missed mate between Dog Answer and Burp Cow. Very nice. Just take here, mate. You're deflecting the bishop. And if you just step back, this is checkmate. So, but this is a low time. I should have other examples, but we're going to go on straight to the next theme, which is interference. Craze against antic. Interference. So you want to move the knight to open up this check. So it's a discovered check. But where to put the knight? And it turns out the best place to put the knight is on B1, G1 rather, because it interferes with the rook's defense of the back rank. And just to show you, if this, you suddenly have rook at D1 checkmate simply because that knight is protecting the back rank. So because of that, it's sensible for white to try and create some luft for his king. So takes, and king e1, trying to run with the king. So king f1 doesn't really work because just bishop takes g2 and you pick up another knight, so that's what you need for mate. But if you go the other way, well, we're picking up a knight with check. You could block, but that doesn't really work because just knight here is checkmate. And you could move, but then how are we going to mate with the knight? Put the rook back here. If king here, bishop here is checkmate, so king here, but now the knight is just what we need to finish off the mate. So that's an interference mate. Now, next one is an interference back rank mate. Sorry, I paused that. Sorry, I'm going fairly. So can I show the line ending rook at d1 check again? Yes. So the beauty of this move, as opposed to say this, against any other knight move, you just put your pawn here, bishop takes, and step up. And the rook would be covering the back rank. But you don't have that. So that's why he has to create some kind of luft for his king, some air to breathe. Again, he doesn't want to do this because he's just going to get back rank mated. Rook here and rook here checkmate. So he's going to get back rank mated, which is why he can't block on e2. He has to run instead. And it looks like he's running, but no, you stop him running by putting a rook on the second rank. If this, then this, and knight here is checkmate. So he has to go this way, still pick up the knight, then you go back, and again, if this, then this is checkmate. So he has to go this way, but you have a knight in hand, so it's checkmate. Okay, so this one needs some thinking. So, okay, what we'd like to do is moves like this check. The problem is this comes with a counter check. So there's a genius interference move that black has in this position. So it's interference, and then we get what we want. Okay, so you throw in a check that cuts off this. And actually, white can't mess around. He can't just sidestep. He gets smothered mated. Got to watch out for the smothered mates. And of course, taking with the pawn is not very sensible. In the original position, the problem is any capture on f2 is followed by a check back on us. So you have to do this first. And yeah, if king h1, there's just a standard smothered mate. So he has to take back. But the only reason we did this, by the way, is just so we can do this. And he can't take back with check. By the way, he does have to take back. If he just sidesteps, this is a nice clearance mate on h2. So he does have to take this annoying bishop. And unluckily for him, he'd be completely fine if he had a rook in hand, because you go queen here, rook here, we have nothing. So so if I just go this, and it's our move, we don't, apparently we still have mate, but it's kind of, okay, I mean this is surprising to me. Okay, so there is some mate using rook at h1, but my goodness, it's not very easy. And ripping open h3. But the point, okay, so apparently there is some crazy mate, and that was, yeah, okay, that's nice to see. I thought though, yeah, so interesting. So if he did have a queen in hand, queen takes rook and rook at f2, picking up that queen with check is actually quite strong. But he doesn't have anything in hand, so what's coming is actually just queen takes rook and rook at g1. It's kind of a bit easy. Okay, but actually he does have a better move, simply pushing the rook back. But then we do what we do, the pawn here, rip off that rook, and yeah, it's just checkmate. So that's an interference back rank mate. We interfere, and then we have these back rank ideas after bishop takes f2. Okay, so next we have the cookie crumb theme, which we discussed yesterday, but here another couple of examples of cookie crumbs. You draw the king up the board, and here there's actually a cookie crumb deflection idea, because if you take with the king, queen here is checkmate, so you have to take with the knight. And now you can get the king taking on h3. So the knight is overburdened, it can't protect both. So yeah, on the face of it, we didn't have a cookie crumb because the knight is protecting. But there is a cookie crumb because the knight is overburdened. But you have to do it the right way round. Actually, you don't need to do it the right way round. This way works as well. Knight takes at f3, takes, and queen here also works. Should have said that. This is the finisher. The finisher is a master of cookie crumbs. As black, he played takes. You do have to take it. If you just try and step back, it's not good. Now takes here and brings the queen in. And the king has no escape. The queen controls that diagonal and takes any blockers. So in that original position, you might not think there is it's a queen sack and bring the queen in. Even though we don't have, yeah, a bishop would also be mating, but we didn't have a bishop, but we still got mate. Okay, now, so that's some cookie crumbs, but we did that yesterday. Next idea, the smother. Gosh, we're going with one of the most difficult smothered mates ever. Like, you've seen all these simple smothered mates. This is one of the most difficult. Okay, so here goes. This is Schwanet as black against Soham 0705. And Schwanet didn't play exactly the right move because he put a rook on h1. I think you have to pull the trigger first. So put the rook on e1, picking up the queen. And the idea of this is, this is the important one. So if king takes, we have this and this. I mean, it doesn't matter which bishop or which piece. So that's all very straightforward. So you have to go rook takes. And this is where the smother comes in, because queen at h1. You can't be silly and just block it because that's mate. So you have to eat the queen. And so that's why I call it a smother, because it would be a smother if you don't eat the queen. And now check, and we have another knight. So checkmate. Pretty nice. My son never called me says, for some reason I couldn't find mate in the 24th puzzle after knight at f6. So that's just backing up a second. It's an interference back. Knight f3, g takes f3. Knight takes f3, g takes f3. Okay. So we're going to do the same idea of takes, and you can't really mess around, because if you just go here, pawn at g2, draw him out, knight here, and queen here, checkmate, the queen is defended. So you do have to take it, and then we're going to put, I was going to put the queen on the back rank, but knight here seems good. So the idea is if you just come chasing, then I'm just going to go queen here, king takes knight, and knight takes rook is checkmate. So the knight check's probably going to push you. But what else do you do? Wherever else you go, queen at g1 is mate. So wherever you go, queen at g1 is mate, but if you step up, then you've got queen here, king here, knight takes rook is mate, because the queen is covering. But so knight h3 works, but actually I would say queen at e1, just the same mate as before works. So if you block with a bishop or something, okay, block with a knight. A knight's kind of annoying. So if you block with a knight, you've still got queen takes rook, and you don't have queen takes pawn because of the knight, but you've got rook here, checkmate. So the best defense is going to be, so this isn't the fastest mate, but this is the most natural, rook f1. Then you go knight h3 check. And hang on, is knight? Yeah, knight h3 check. And the point is, if he goes into the corner, you just take and put a rook on g1. So he has to step up, and then you take. And if he goes king takes, you go rook at g1 checkmate. So he better go bishop takes. Now we go rook at g1, king takes knight, and knight here. So that also works. So the line with bishop takes was takes, queen here, f2. So you could ask, why doesn't it work? Why not go f2 in that line? So takes, queen here, rook here at f2. That surely is going to be good as well. So obviously if king here, just go queen takes rook. So king g2 is necessary. And then I'm thinking knight do we go knight h4? This is how to lose it, isn't it? Knight h4 might be how to lose it, because he goes to h3 and then we don't have continuations. So you want to keep h4 available for a rook. So queen takes rook is nice, because if he takes with the king, it's just checkmate. So he has to take with the bishop. And so again, I'm doing this just because I'm trying to make it complicated for myself. So this would be a way. I've kind of lost the plot, but there's still apparently a way of saving it. So I'll just look at the engine. It's at h3. He has to take it. Then rook at h4. Rook at h4 is good. Yeah, I like that. Then take here. King comes up, and the queen comes in with checkmate. No, the queen doesn't, because the king will escape. So even better than queen coming in. Queen coming in is fine. Queen coming in, and pawn here is checkmate. So yeah, that's the best attempt to mess it up. And the point is, you have to realize you want your rook on h4, and then you're good. But yeah, so but actually there's an important principle here, that if that pawn is dislodged, h3 is weak, so you have ideas of knight h3. So bishop takes pawn, knight h3 straight away. Very powerful. Okay, so we were looking at this smaller position. Soham against Schwanet, and everything is very forcing. Yeah. And there's a very interesting game between 264 Brock and Oppa, which ended in a draw. And I'm just showing the game because a lot of the game was based on Oppa trying to swindle a smother. So bishop here, queen here, he's trying to get 264 Brock to take so you can get the smothered mate. Okay, 264 Brock not having any of it. So I want that queen for a rook, please. So pawn here, queen here. Okay, he wants to sidestep because he wants the rook for f1 back, going for a back rank mate now, is Oppa. d4 is just to give the king a bit of luft. Takes the rook because he knows it's getting taken. Rook here, rook takes f2, and knight f to g4. Another rook on f2, and the game ended in a draw. And notice if the king doesn't go to e1, if the king goes here, then pawn at f2 is checkmate, so that's not very good. If the king goes to e1, that's also dangerous, because then you've got pawn here, and then you're picking up the queen with check, so that's also leading to mate. So it's very important in this position that the king goes to e2, but 264 Brock didn't make a mistake. I understand people need to go, and this was meant to be a short stream. It just went on. It happens to me a lot. But thanks so much for all the support. So we'll just try and rattle through a few things. This is a missed mate I had against Atamek. The point is, it looks like it's a kind of smother kind of position, but it's like you open up this square and then you try and get in, and you're picking up a bishop with check, and that's actually enough to mate. You're drawing that king up the board, and I had enough to mate. Just with, in the initial position, 2 knights and a bishop, I could have used the 2 knights to get that king out of its safety, and just with those couple of bishops, I actually have mate. Okay, so I think I should also call it a day around here, because I'm supposed to be catching a train, and how should I finish? Maybe let's finish with some more of these smaller follow-ups, and then we'll call it a day. Smaller follow-ups. So you want knight at h6, and if you don't take it, it's a smothered mate, and if you do take it, then you draw the king out, and then you just simply put a pawn on the dark squares, and notice you can't take here, or queen h4 is mate in 1, so just put pawns on the dark squares, and you don't even need the queen, even a pawn is enough. This is a really important kind of just general pattern. If you have a knight here, it's controlling the light squares, and then you want to control the dark squares with pawns. This was dog answer against burp cow. If king h1, there's a very nice kind of smother idea, which is queen at g1 takes, and with the second knight you have mate. And sometimes called it okay mate, because I came up with it a few times in a row, and it's like, why does this keep on happening? So you can't sidestep, but you can't step up either, because otherwise there's an easy mate, just knight and queen. And so you have to take it, but if you take it, you open up g2, and we know what happens when you open up g2. All kinds of trouble happens. So you don't go queen here, because then the king's actually getting out, and the queen is out of the game. Instead you go bishop takes pawn, and then bring the knight back, and we saw this mate before. The queen and the knight working together. So let's just look at one more smother follow-up. This is Burp Cow against Jan Lee. This is beautiful. Let's finish with this one. Jan Lee, as black, found a beautiful mate here with knight at h3. What's the idea of this? The idea of this is if you sidestep, in fact that's what Burp Cow did, you just go pawn here and you can't be taken because otherwise queen at g1 is a smothered mate. So it can't be taken with the knight, but it could be taken with this, but then just simply to this. And if the king comes up, then you could go queen here and pawn here. That would work. But you actually have mate in 1 with knight at e2 because the bishops are controlling all of these squares. So you can't sidestep. In fact, what Burp Cow had to do was take, but that's no good either because the moment you take, you're no longer controlling the g2 square. So this, then at g2, king takes g2, pick up that knight with check, he has to take it, stop him from running back, and maybe he goes to here to try and survive, but queen at h4 is checkmate, the knight cutting him off. Okay, I have more themes in the study which I'll attach with the video. Discovery, magnet back rank, magnet deflections, lots of magnet mates. Maybe we'll do it another time. And then the clearance mates, the castaway mates. Clearance is when you get rid of your opponent's pieces. Castaway is when you get rid of your own pieces. The moon mate is like when you set up an ammo dump for future use. It's quite a complicated mating idea. Some defensive puzzles, and yeah. And then this one, yeah, this is a little puzzle from Dog Answer VO variants only. There's a very nice mate here, which is simply you threaten mate with bishop at g8. You threaten this mate. Now how do you stop the rook going here? And you can't take the bishop because then this is mate. So it's like a really nice, it's not check, but it's just like there's nothing black can do. He could throw a check back and you just take it. So it was just a nice example that Kleerkast came up with. Okay, another day perhaps, but hopefully, so we've introduced a lot of these. We haven't got onto the magnet mates basically, so maybe the magnet mates deserve their own stream one day. So we've done a fairly assorted set of puzzles from the Crazyhouse World Championship. We've done the March puzzles from Kleerkast. We haven't done the April ones, and we've done some more which we saw in the first few rounds and in the candidates. But yeah, I've been streaming too long. So thanks everyone for watching. If there's someone I should raid, then let me know. I'm just checking if there's anyone I follow who... Yeah, let's just raid Lafong. And yeah, have a good rest of your day. Have a good weekend. I won't be streaming for the rest of the weekend, but I'm expecting the real Grenadiers might be streaming at the weekend because Jan Lee is playing against Blitzbullet, and that's a very exciting match happening tomorrow at 12 at midday UTC. Yeah, thanks my son over call me for joining. I should just shout out with everyone who was joining and commentating, especially. So my son never call me, Apostatlet, Oppa Wazen, aka Saxsitter, Gingerbread Man, and anyone else who was just enjoying listening in. But yeah, thanks for making it a very interactive stream. I appreciate it. I'm sorry I have to close early, as it were. Okay, bye guys.